Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of What a Hell of a Way to Die. It's me and Nate back at it again. Nate, it's June. How are things? How's the Jubilee been over there in sunny England?
Well, the bunting is still all over the, Union Jack little mini flags and shit that people have tied around on their houses and stuff like that. There's lots of Union Jacks. There's a pub we passed yesterday that had portraits of the Queen and Princess Diana all over the windows and things like that. I find it really strange, but I mean, I imagine this is what British people must feel like whenever there's some bizarre American patriotic thing. So that's just life.
It sounds very 4th of July, but for England, like
sure,
you guys still have at least England still has like a queen to there's a royal family to rally around. We're just like 250 years ago, we got real mad about paying taxes and shot a bunch of people, and now we're a country.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, 250 years ago, we got really mad because we realized how much money we could make from slavery without paying taxes to the British. And so we decided to make this oopsie whoopsie, slavery is going to have to fucking continue despite our best intentions constitution. And thus was born America, the country that definitely does not have any baked in problems.
What is America but just eternally being read and mad and nude online?
Very much so, yeah. So to be honest with you, we weren't in London for the Jubilee. We had booked a trip to Belgium back in November. It was going to be like the end of November, like right after, I mean, obviously Thanksgiving's not a holiday here, but like right after that to like the beginning of December, we're going to meet up with some of Cynthia's friends. And right about that time, Omicron hit and stuff in Belgium went back into like lockdown. Like they were shutting stuff down early and the hotel was like, you absolutely can cancel, it's fine. So we got a refund, but we couldn't get our tickets refunded. We could only change the travel dates for the train tickets. So we just pushed it forward and picked a weekend in June, and turned out to be Jubilee weekend. So I mean, no great harm done.
Finally, like you get some people in England. They want to bring people together. They want to, for once, not be a bunch of assholes. And you're just like, God, get me to a different country.
Well, I mean, can you imagine being British in America when Americans are being really stupid about something like
the 4th of July?
The 4th of July, or whichever holiday has also been requisitioned to be Dead Troops Day, like the way in which it's not just Memorial Day and Veterans Day. Apparently, you have to get shamed on Thanksgiving, on Christmas, on New Year's, on Columbus Day, on President's Day. Like, genuinely, speaking as someone who in the military only appreciated those days because of the 4-day weekends, I have to say, the way in which there has been like just as much mission creep of troop remembrance holidays as there was mission creep in terms of America just more or less declaring war on the entirety of the Muslim world, like it's staggering to me. I don't recall it being this fucking weird when we were younger, when tons and tons and tons of Vietnam and World War II veterans were still alive. You know what I mean? Like, obviously, there's still a lot of Korea and Vietnam veterans alive, but not that many World War II veterans. But when we were kids, there were a lot. I mean, it was the 50th anniversary of World War II. Like, a lot of those World War II vets were like my dad's age back then. And so it was, it was a big deal. And I just don't remember it being this fucking weird. Like, I can remember, obviously, Memorial Day, obviously Veterans Day, and there was a little bit of sort of troop adjacent stuff on the 4th of July, both because of the fact that like the national anthem is about a fucking battle, and there's fireworks symbolizing the battle, and it's America's day to be America, and how we fought a war to be America. Like, yes, there's going to be some troop adjacent stuff there, even back in the 90s, but I do not recall it being so odd.
I think it's, this Memorial Day seemed very muted to me. There is, of course, like, there's residual stuff going on from the last 20 years, right? So like
sure.
we had to be banging the dead troops drum and talk about how much we love our live troops and dead troops and all this shit. And, that during an active war, a hot war, and I'll say the first half of the war, so the first decade, the aughts. And then after that, it really seemed to just kind of be a thing that was pushed by like right-wingers, and of course people were like, yeah, D-Day and our troops overseas. But now that we're not fighting really a large war, and in fact, not only are we not fighting a large war, but there is a different war that's happening that does not really include us at all, other than, shipping some javelins overseas. I really wonder if like like I gotta say, I'm gonna say this, and this is gonna sound fucking ridiculous, but it is where I'm kind of marking where I'm noticing and please understand, I'm not complaining about this. I just think it's an interesting pivot that's happening in American society. So there's this place I like to go to on Sundays. I drop my kid off at dance class. She's got like an hour and a half. Sometimes my wife and I go, sometimes it's just me. It's called Savers. It's like Goodwill, but it's fancier. And for those of you who don't know what either of those are, it's a secondhand store. It's a place where you can donate stuff and then you can go buy.
For British listeners, it's like the charity shop, basically.
Sure. And, everything's in there's cheap. I like to go in there. I like to look for books. I like to, look for, cast iron stuff because there's always something. I go in there. It's a way to kill an hour or so, right? So they used to have a military discount every day. And now it's only on Wednesdays. They've fucking pulled that shit back to just Wednesdays, which again is fine. But it is a curious, like, you start to kind of see the pullback of like, we don't actually have to do this anymore. And, I'm perfectly fine with that as long as I continue to get my 10% off at Lowe's. I don't give a shit. But like, at a certain point in time, that's probably going to go away as well. I feel, especially if we don't, get inflation and whatnot under control, companies are going to start saying, well, fuck these troops and their 10%. It's going to
be interesting because of the extent to which there's a whole generation of people who are sort of normalized with the idea that we always get special treatment. I mean, my mom was really taken aback by this even, 10 years ago, getting sort of like people trying to shame her into doing stuff, using troop shame. And she was just like, I was in the Army. My husband was in the Army. My son is currently in the Army. My father was, a senior chief master sergeant in the Air Force. My father-in-law was in the Army. Like, what are you fucking talking about? Mm-hmm. But you realize that this was such a normalized thing that people would try to like browbeat civilians with. And it always grossed me out a little bit when I was in. And now that I've been out like well over longer than I was in, I was in 7 years. I've been out 8 years now. It's just very, very strange to imagine just like if you could concentrate all of the discomfort that has produced in America, it would be like nuclear fusion. Mm-hmm. Like it's just so intensely gross to me to try and do that. And so in a way, I hope it goes away just because I think for one, and I know I jumped in, Francis, for one, I feel like there's already a lack of understanding of like what the average troop's life is like. And that's not to say that you're living in the lap of luxury when you're in the barracks, but also that like, there are people in America who are in much worse straits. Let's be fucking perfectly honest here. Who are in much worse straits, who don't have at least, who don't have anything to rely on because our state is a joke, in terms of like what it actually provides for people. And I don't say that to denigrate troops so much as I think people should keep stuff in perspective, that folks who are seeing their incomes eaten up by, 40% rent increases and fuel hikes, massive, expansions of things, like that's a little bit more severe in my opinion than like when people are complaining that, their basic allowance for housing doesn't leave any surplus because rent is so high now. So like it used to be I could pocket $400 extra a month and now I have to spend $50 out of pocket. It's like, well, that sucks for you, but that's not really a fucking national crisis now, is it?
No, I mean? And look, there are way too many active duty soldiers who have to apply for and fall under SNAP and but food stamps for those older ones out there. So like there definitely is problems.
Sure, but they also have access to fucking at-cost groceries in a way that no one who doesn't have a DoD ID card does.
Exactly.
Like, I'm not saying that that's not a bad situation to be in which people literally, because of their salary, qualify for because of the low income that they receive in terms of cash income or taxable income, they qualify for benefits. Like that's fucked up. The base pay should be higher. Don't get me wrong, but like if you're broke in the military, you have access to stuff like a lending closet. You have access to stuff on post like childcare, which I realize there's going to be wait lists. Like it's not perfect by any means. Don't get me wrong, but you have access to it. You have access to at-cost groceries at the commissary. You have access to things that you just cannot get in the civilian world. Like genuinely cannot get. And I sometimes feel as though it's hard to have that conversation because there's almost no way, and I'm sure someone's listening to this right now is like, fuck you, piece of shit. Also, you were an officer. Yeah, I was. But here's the thing, right? I'm not saying this to say, fuck you, you never had it so good. I'm saying keep it in perspective. Like, keep it in fucking perspective. One of the things that really changed my opinion, like, from being more or less, I'm going to call it like, I guess market solutions are the only way kind of liberal, to being way more left-wing, was seeing the poverty in Alaska versus how wealthy of a state it is. You know what I mean? Like, seeing the conditions people live in. And
realizing it's a state that's just like, we have so much money, we're giving it away.
So much money, but the way they do it is so cynical. You know, it's like, yes, you get the permanent fund dividend if you qualify, but like, in most cases, that's less than $2,000 a year per person in your family. It's probably closer to like $1,000 nowadays. Like, great, if you have a family of 4, that's an extra $4,000 a year. Can you live on $4,000 in a year? Like,
well, in Alaska, I don't know, can I?
No, dude, fucking everything's more expensive there. Yeah. Everything's more expensive. Gas is insanely expensive there compared to the rest of the U.S.
Everything's got to be imported unless you want to buy ice.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's like, here's a state where you have an enormous amount of revenue. You have an enormous like permanent fund that's been saved up, and they give money away to people every year, but all the Head Starts are closed. There's one Medicaid approved rehab center in the entire state, or at least there was in the late 2000s when I lived there. Like, it was so cynical. It was so like libertarian, fuck you. And it really, like, seeing how that affects people and how that affects like people who have no choice, like children, that really, really opened my eyes to a lot of stuff. And so the point I make is that, like, yeah, if you were a troop, stuff was expensive, and we definitely had people who were qualified for stuff like WIC and SNAP and things like that. But also, like, if you were a troop, your family is qualified for things that none of those people outside post qualify for.
Yeah, it is. As I try to explain to people, like, it's easy for us to say don't join the army, but it's hard for when you're an 18-year-old and you're looking at fucking prospects in 2002 in America. You're like, well, where else am I going to get a job that's going to pay me right out the gate? Is going to give me 30 days of vacation, give me a bunch of like 4-day weekends that I'm going to be fully paid for. And I mean, look, guys, Army's not hard. It's not a hard job. Like, depending on what job you do in it, like, it was infantry. That shit's hard. Don't be infantry if you're going to do it. But, do something.
It's definitely hard on your body, but also I feel like it's a lot easier to say don't do a hard job. Like, if your ASVAB scores only qualify you for combat arms, then that's all you're going to get.
Yeah.
But I'd also say that, I think something that's interesting to me, I wouldn't go so far as to say the Army isn't hard, because the Army you have no control over your life. You have no control over your life. You have no control over, that you get little bursts of freedom, but you really have no say. If somebody wants to, fucking confine you to a stairwell and make you eat MREs because they think that you wore, the wrong color hat that morning, they can. There's not much you can do about it. So I don't recommend it, because I think of the total lack of freedom and the fact that, like, you technically have the right to refuse a immoral, unethical, or illegal order, but like,
I was gonna say, if somebody's telling you to sit in a stairwell and eat MREs, get that shit in writing, because and then subvert that person and go over their head, because that's fucked up.
That's the thing, though, dude. That's what you say. You can't.
That's why this is why I say the Army's easy. It's because of specifically all those things. You don't have to think. You don't have to do these things. Just show up and you do your job, and you do that shit for 4 years, and you can fuck off and go do something else. Now, again, don't join the fucking Army ever. Like, ever don't join the Army. Certainly we're not suddenly turning a corner here and just being like, well, maybe. I'm just saying I understand why it's attractive. I understand why it's an attractive thing. Yes.
I do too, but no offense, man. Please don't take this personally, but like, I was active duty infantry, and so I would never in a million years say, oh, the Army is easy, and like, that, and also that, like, when I think about the kind of things I saw soldiers put through as punitive measures, where they were doing this really humiliating stuff because they were given the choice between that or like UCMJ that would have gotten them kicked out of the military. Like, obviously they were going to take the things they could keep their benefits, but just like the sheer, like, wanton cruelty with which people were put through stuff. Like, I saw a soldier, and I am not fucking lying, assigned hard labor as a punishment, and it required him to break boulders with a fucking sledgehammer 12 hours a day with 10 minutes each hour for a water break while we were out in the field. And in Korea. Like, for instance, like, no offense, buddy.
No,
like, this is the tension of our show. You and I had very different experiences in the military.
We do. Our class divide is very strange because you were the officer and you had to deal with way more shit, and I was the enlisted guy in the air conditioning.
Yeah, and I mean, I've seen soldiers punished, and also, like, just the level of, I feel as though, obviously there's a lot of psychological damage that comes from both being in danger and then potentially being forced to commit violence, or committing violence wantonly, or being sort of part of a group that wants to commit violence wantonly, and you have to sort of abandon your principles. Maybe you just don't have principles to begin with. Like, there's lots of options, both for like exposure to trauma and moral injury, or just the sort of dehumanizing effects of being in a machine that does violence. So like, there's that in the beginning, but also the extent to which the total lack of autonomy and freedom can damage people. Like, it really depends on the person. Some people are fine with it, some people aren't. But like, is that a choice you want to gamble with? You know what I mean? Like, I think it rewires your brain no matter how cake your job is. And chances are good, if you get a non-cake military occupational specialty, it's going to fucking suck. And like, if you want to do it, do it. I can't stop you. The Army does this, this, in my opinion, very despicable sleight of hand in which it basically sells you on this idea that you're going to get all of these benefits and no drawbacks. And it's like, bro, they get every fucking penny of benefits out of you. Every penny of benefits they get out of you. You know what I mean? And so I saw that. I saw soldiers kicked out for don't ask, don't tell. I saw soldiers more or less hand waved when they had absolute right to file congressionals, by which I mean abuse was happening to them or they were being mistreated, and their chain of command basically threatened them with punishment if they used the legal recourse they had to complain about it. I saw soldiers held financially liable for bullshit, like in incredibly extenuated circumstances that had no real bearing on anything they had done. Like, they were sort of acting the way a private would, and they decided to make an example of them and making them financially liable for shit that got lost in, a multi-trillion-dollar war. Like, if there's any crusty infantry NCOs who still listen to this show for some reason, they probably think I'm a huge Joe hugger. But you know what? Like, I'd rather be a Joe hugger than a fucking tyrant and a piece of shit. So that's just the way that I feel. Like, is that what they call officers who aren't massive assholes? They call them Joe huggers? Or NCOs. Officers or NCOs who don't want to crack the whip on soldiers or who take soldiers' sides in situations like...
You respect your PFCs? What a fucking douchebag you are. What the fuck? God, no wonder things are... No wonder. Now it makes sense. Now everything makes sense, Nate.
Yeah, Francis, you got to realize that, like, no offense, man. Like, you spent 20 years in the reserves and like you got deployed more than I did. But like,
oh yeah,
I spent 7 years. I spent 7 years active duty in infantry units. In an airborne unit, in a mechanized unit, and like
you're there during surge years too, right?
I was, yes.
Yeah, so that's also I was a part-timer. I didn't really have to deal with any of this bullshit. Everything, and like I said, completely different circumstances and positions that we have. I didn't really see any of this stuff. Which I'm not denying happens. And again, still don't ever join the fucking army. I have fucking
pictures. I've got a picture on my Dropbox of that soldier breaking fucking boulders.
Oh, Jesus.
Dead serious, man. Like, because I was so taken aback. Because what's really funny is that this was in the middle of monsoon season in Korea, and they had put the operating center, like the tactical operating center, but for training it was just a bunch of tents with like computers and printers and briefing rooms and stuff for us to like plan training. And they had put it on this like concrete pad, like this flat concrete pad, but it was built on a hill at Rod Range in Chorwon in South Korea, and it kind of sloped a little bit, and the way it was built with this embankment, it caused water to build up when it rained hard, which it rains during monsoon season, in case you were unaware of this. And they needed to sandbag stuff. We eventually had to strike the whole talk and move it because stuff kept flooding. But I was like, wow, that's really funny, guys. That's really funny. We could have prevented all this flooding if we had sandbagged it before the rain. I wonder if we had a guy who could be filling fucking sandbags. But no, you stupid motherfuckers had him scraping the rust off a Sherman tank from the fucking display out front of the base with a fucking Brillo pad. Because you want to be like, we're such hard asses, we're punishing this soldier. And, we offered him either this for a month or 5 years confinement. So, of course, he took this humiliation. Like, I don't know how the fuck you look at that shit and you don't say, like, this is absolutely immoral. That's what I said at the time. But obviously, like, once again, at a certain point, like, you get told, fuck off, Captain. You don't get a say when the battalion commander decides he's going to humiliate this kid. So, like, do you want to gamble with that for free college? Maybe you do. Maybe you are 100%, like, because that's peacetime military. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. That's peacetime. That's not deployment. That's not combat. That's not moral injury. That's not exposure to death and violence. That's not possibility of, like, the enemy shooting back and being a better shot and killing you. That's peacetime army, you know? Anyone who's been in the army more than fucking 5 days can tell you a story about someone being seriously hurt in training or killed in training, stateside, or, like, you know, non-combat deployment abroad. Especially actually non-combat deployment abroad, because you're always doing ops. And, like, people just, I saw a soldier getting fucking medevac for having a Bradley engine block fall on his hand. Like, you know how big a Bradley is? You know how big its engine block is? That soldier would never use his hand ever again. So, like, free college, but you lose a fucking hand. You know what I mean? So, like, I don't mean to open a big parentheses, but, like, when people say, oh, the army is easy, like, here's the thing, right? There are ways in which you can make being in the military in general easy for you. That is a gamble. I would not take it if I had the choice to do it again. I understand all the societal pressures to do it. Obviously, I was stupid and, what's the right word? Gave in to those pressures. I would strongly recommend not doing it. However, if you get killed, there is a special holiday just for the people who get killed, as well as for everyone who doesn't get killed.
We'll put a little flag on your grave. It'll be nice.
So, you also have a story.
Speaking of wanting to run the fuck away from the military because it's horrible. This story from Task and Purpose that says sailors are deserting the Navy at a staggering rate. Because, God, it seems like every 6 months there's a new scandal with the Navy. The Navy in particular. And I don't know. I need to bring some more Navy people on. Unfortunately, we keep the only water dog I know is Carrie, and he's Coast Guard, so he doesn't really also count for the big ships.
Amber and Sarah.
Yeah.
Amber from Unauthorized Absence, and Sarah from It Came from the Sea. So we need to bring more Navy folks on to talk about being wet soldiers, because the Navy forever remains a mystery to us. Because if you encounter the Navy, oftentimes it's either some ridiculously high-speed special operations thing, or it's the most fucked up soldiers you've ever seen in your life, with inscrutable rank that makes no sense whatsoever, hair like you wouldn't believe, and the worst morale of any branch of service, to include the fucking Marine Corps.
Yeah, at least the Marines put something in the MREs to, like, really get you into the cult mentality. I don't know what it is. I think it's because, you know, every Navy person you meet, their enlisted ranks are shiny. So when you're, like, just learning that if it shines, you salute it, and you're saluting a bunch of fucking petty officers. And then secondly, the rank said, oh, I'm an HM04. Shut the fuck up. What the fuck
I'm
does
a
that even mean?
YN1. What does that mean?
Are you a sergeant? Are you an NCO? Look, there's non-NCOs, there's NCOs, there's officers. There's 3 fucking categories you're supposed to fall into. Oh, well, I'm a JR074.
I mean, that's also the thing, too, is that, like for me, it was, obviously, I knew who to salute because they had their tiny rank, but, you know, rarely did I encounter Navy officers who weren't at least, I don't know if they call them field grade, whatever they call, but, like, lieutenant commander and above. Whereas for the NCOs, like, obviously they have to salute any officer, but I could never tell, like, if this was like a scared sailor saluting me or like a really, really grizzled petty officer, be like, you fucking piece of shit, you know. Also, like when a chief warrant officer 5 has to salute a second lieutenant, it's like, it's the Navy. It's weird. And you know, I think it's because, you know, as the Navy came up, of course, back when they were wind powered and everything, the Navy was like very much its own grandiose kind of, I don't know. There's just like some romance and majesty to, you know, just getting scurvy and eating hardtack filled with maggots and whatnot. So that kind of translates to now, where the Navy is this weird thing that is very waterlogged, and I don't understand them, but I do know that every time I turn around, it seems like the Navy is involved in some kind of scandal.
They're either running their boats into each other, they're running their boats into some civilian boats, or they got Fat Leonard going on, which I know you and I...
just literally every single flag officer in the Navy is apparently implicated in a prostitution scandal with a Portuguese guy with Macanese citizenship.
Their captains
knows?
are 06s. I don't fucking get it, man. Like, it doesn't make any sense.
The rank system, the rank system is at least slightly easy for me, just because like there's not that many officer ranks to remember. So correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think it goes ensign, lieutenant, junior grade, lieutenant, lieutenant commander, commander, captain, and then it's different kinds of admirals. And I don't know it, but
there's like
stars.
rear admiral and stuff like that.
Yeah, who knows?
Not helping your case calling things rear admiral there, Navy.
The inscrutable world of the Navy remains this just weird mystery. I don't deal with anything that's not on land. Let's read this article really fast.
I mostly remember their ranks because of watching Star Trek.
Well, let's read this article real fast. So, the number of sailors who deserted the Navy last year is more than double the number who deserted in 2019, a statistic that one expert described as, quote, staggering. According to a new report from NBC, 157 sailors deserted the Navy last year, compared to 98 in 2020 and 63 in 2019. While Navy officials couldn't explain the increase to NBC, they pointed to the, quote, many different stressors, unquote, in the service, and there have been many stressors made public in the last several months. The service started the year amid a water contamination crisis in Hawaii that displaced thousands of service members and their families from their homes. In February, junior soldiers and sailors told Navy Times they were living without, quote, basic quality of life, unquote, at the Naval Support Activity Bethesda Barracks, which houses the Walter Reed National Military Medical Center. Navy Times described barracks that went without air conditioning for several months in the summer, had no hot water, even had doors that wouldn't lock. And at Naval Air Station Key West, Florida, junior sailors are on their own to find housing after the Navy recently announced it was shutting down a barracks for repairs. The Navy has also seen a string of deaths, many of which are suspected to be suicides, aboard the USS George Washington as it undergoes extensive repairs. Sailors told Military.com last month that the people who had to move back on board despite it being worked on meant they were living in a, quote, construction zone, unquote, with constant problems that have added up over time and, quote, never goes away, unquote. Quote, there's grinding, needle gunning, and there's always problems with ventilation. There's always problems with hot water, one sailor said. In response to sailors' questions about their living conditions, the message from Master Chief Petty Officer of the Navy, Russell Smith, was essentially, things could be worse. Quote, I hear your concerns and you should always raise them, but you do have to do so with reasonable expectations and then understanding what this is like, Smith recently told sailors during a visit to the aircraft carrier. What you are not doing is sleeping in a foxhole like a Marine might be doing. What you are doing is going home at night, most nights, unlike the Harry S. Truman.
Look, I don't know any Marine who slept in a foxhole that wasn't, deployed. This is Marine. Look, if you're a Marine, right into the show. If, in Camp Pendleton, you get done with your workday and you have to go sleep in a foxhole. Maybe you do. I don't know. You got, again, Marines are basically Navy. You're wet soldiers. I don't get it. But
I mean, I've had to sleep overnight, sort of in whatever the fuck you get your hands on in Afghanistan. But like on a cop or on like sort of a short halt, what we call a RON, like a remain overnight position. But because of the way we were operating at the time, there were vehicles involved, and so we just pulled security with the guys in the turrets, and then if it was your turn to rest, then you would just sleep inside the circle. So in my case, I remember sleeping next to a fucking MRAP tire.
But that's wartime though. This is peacetime. Yeah. This is in fucking the United States, where in theory you could build you could get them billets somewhere. You could build a tent city somewhere. I've lived in tent cities for an extended period of time. It's not great, but I'd rather that than live on a ship that is actively being worked on.
Sure. So let's continue the story because I feel like, that's pretty tone deaf. And I mean, I've seen people complain where I remember a bunch of people losing their minds in our sustainment unit in Korea because there weren't barrack space at one of the ranges. And so they were being told they would have to assemble cots and sleep outside. And people were full on we're gonna call 2 congressionals about this. And one of the commanders was like, listen, guys, one of your sister units had its tents flood, and literally they had soldiers with trench foot. It's a clear night and it's one single night. I promise you you'll be fine.
Yeah, that's
we're not getting mortared. We're not in a combat zone.
I've slept under the stars in Afghanistan before. It's nothing. You do it for a couple of days or an extended period of time, but like also again, that's a war zone.
Yeah,
things are different.
I think this is him using hyperbole to tell people to stop complaining when they're absolutely entitled to complain. Also, the thing I would say about the situation in Korea was that was in the field. That was during gunnery. Like, it wasn't if people were expected to sleep, with their cots outside in a parking lot, like at the barracks back on base.
Sure.
2 of the Navy deserters still at large as of May 9th were from the USS George Washington, according to the NBC. But the USS George Washington is just one of multiple housing issues that have come to light this year. Nevertheless, improving housing and living arrangements don't appear to be a top concern for Navy leaders. As military.com reported on Thursday, the Navy is still, quote, prioritizing other construction issues, unquote, such as shipyards over their housing. During a congressional hearing this week, Meredith Berger, Assistant Secretary of the Navy for Environment, Installations, and Energy, said the service's construction budget of almost $3.8 billion would be used to, quote, continue to optimize our naval shipyards and enable operating capability of platforms such as the Columbia-class submarine and the F-35, unquote, according to military.com. Later in the hearing, Representative Debbie Wasserman Schultz, Democrat of Florida, said Navy officials that, quote, toys, for lack of a better term, should not be a higher priority than making sure of the quality of where our troops live, unquote. Master Chief Petty Officer Smith responded that those toys were things we used to fight, military.com reported. Are y'all doing a lot of fighting right now with Columbia-class submarines and F-35s? Just asking.
And even, like, we just keep selling them off to everybody else anyway. We build them and sell them to fucking Canada or whoever. Like, and this is something that I had to deal with, and that I always roll my eyes at people who talk about runaway military budgets and how the troops are getting everything. Because I'm gonna tell you something, I never saw a fucking dime. Every time the budget went up, like, oh, the military's getting another like $10-15 billion, that shit never came down to me. And I don't mean like my basic pay. I mean training. I mean going to schools. I mean the things that, you're in the Army, you're supposed to be improving upon yourself. And they're like, yeah, we have the money to send you on your 2-week annual training, and literally that's it. We can send 3 people to sergeant school. So you're all going to have to, rock, paper, scissors for it. This is, they're throwing their money at, like you said, our Columbia class submarines and F-35s really that fucking necessary right now. I mean, I feel like if necessary, like if we were suddenly caught in a conventional war that wasn't, Afghanistan or Iraq, where we could get away with using A-10s because like there was no anti-aircraft capabilities, I feel like we could probably crank some stuff out pretty quickly if necessary.
I would also say too that this is one of these situations in which you also have to remember that so much of this budget is then subcontracted to people to do these things. So like the huge cost, the staggering cost, the impossible cost as regards, the defense budget versus every other priority in America, that money doesn't necessarily translate to positive outcomes for the users, for the troops involved, but it does always translate to an enormous amount of money for the sort of private defense contracting industry, the subcontractors, the people who are involved, who get these contracts to do the things.
All these companies that have retired generals on the board for some reason.
Yeah, it's not. The Navy doesn't have its own sort of like state-owned construction company that does this stuff. That would at least make fucking sense if they did. But no, it's always subcontracted and contracted out to civilian companies. So there's a huge amount of money being made.
Yeah, we were given this money to give to somebody else to build stuff. And we only have so many dollars to build our shipyards because that's what the contractors told us it's going to cost. Fucking really, guys? We're going to go with that? I go
back to this tweet that I saw in like 2010 that I think about all the time when this stuff comes up about. It was a Marine officer who said that the military is interesting because America dumps, the lion's share of its budget, hundreds of billions of dollars into the military. And also today on this Marine base where I'm stationed, I tried to fill up my Nalgene bottle with a water tap and ants came out. Yeah, that's basically it. So there's one more paragraph. But for many watching the problems unfold, it's a question of leadership and mental health awareness. One military law attorney, Stephen Carnes, told NBC that of the almost 1,000 desertion cases he's handled, mental health has been a factor in nearly every one. And one Navy veteran, Julian Napoli, recently wrote on Task and Purpose that the Navy has been, quote, mired in a crisis of leadership, unquote, for years, leaving sailors overworked and feeling they can't seek help if they need it. He pointed to a quote from retired Navy SEAL and Medal of Honor recipient Mike Thornton: "Take care of your people and your people will take care of you." Quote, "This simple, powerful principle, if truly followed by naval leadership, would drastically increase combat effectiveness," Napoli wrote. Quote, "It is much to the dismay of sailors that mental health awareness is such a low priority in today's Navy." So I would say off the bat, I've noticed that it seemed like for the entire time that I've been sort of paying attention to military news, I wasn't really that much like involved in the discourse around military stuff when I was a brand new lieutenant, when I was in my unit training to deploy and then deployed. When I came back and I was just sort of, that coincides really with getting on Twitter and also just following the news more closely, both like domestic and internationally. It feels like the entire time, so that's like early 2010 until now, I have felt as though this is a recurring story with the Navy, that you will hear these stories of sailors being put through really, really miserable conditions for no reason other than the fact that like nobody who's in a position to change them knows or cares and simply thinks they're just crying. And there seems to be this much more of a culture of like, you know, officers have their own deck and enlisted have their own deck, and basically the twain shall never meet. And as such, the leadership basically just consigns sailors to suck. And when you look at things like all of the investigations that have led up to, you know, in the aftermath of these collisions, all of the fallout from stuff like Fat Leonard, all of these instances of quality of life issues, or things like, you know, sailors committing suicide, the sailors going missing, things along these lines, you're reminded that it seems as though the Navy is basically made up of guys who really, really like really cool big boats and have no idea that it requires human beings to make them run. That's the best way I could describe it. Like, it's full on, what is it, the time machine, like the Morlocks below the earth. Like
that's what the enlisted seamen are, the Morlocks of the Navy.
I mean, I feel as though the officer class of the Navy, the Navy Officer Corps, in general, seems to treat enlisted sailors like Morlocks. Yeah,
I'm gonna get Sarah or Amber on to talk about it, because it does, like, of course, everybody's mileage may vary in the military, but like, I felt like at least the field grade officers, when I was a sergeant, like, you talk to them, you see them on a regular basis, you plan with them, you sometimes, you know, eat with them and smoke cigarettes and whatnot, you know. But it really feels like the Navy has a much harder divide between the enlisted and the officers, which kind of makes stuff like this happen. Because, like, you know, general officers obviously are all politicians. They don't know what the fuck's going on, you know, for the lower enlisted people. But, like, you know, your captains generally have to live in somewhat similar conditions as the rest of them, as everybody else when you're out kind of...
You mean like your O3s?
Right, yeah.
Like your Navy lieutenants. Yeah, because your Navy captains are the guys with like the staterooms and shit.
Exactly. But, yeah, you know, like, it feels like, I don't... And again, I'm going to have to bring somebody else on. I don't know what the ratio to enlisted to officer is, you know, especially in operational conditions on a ship that's, you know, on deployment versus at home. And I don't know how many officers these guys have. They're living in this construction zone. How many, like, officers are living there with them underneath these conditions as well? I don't know. But it does feel like somebody needs to grab this Admiral and say, no, you're going to bill it down here for two days, and you're going to fucking experience this, and then maybe you'll do something about it. Because therein lies the problem. As you said, your captains, your Navy captains, your 06s, this is an Admiral, so he's higher than that. They don't fucking live in these conditions. They don't know what the fuck's going on. And that's on purpose. Why would they? Why would they want to, you know, go live in these shitty conditions? And therein lies your problem eventually, is that you have the officers who say just garbage shit like this, and everybody's just like, well, I don't want to fucking be here anymore. Like, obviously they don't give a shit.
I think that the impression that I've gotten is that there's obviously really, really different, call it like, styles of leadership or expectations of leadership across different branches. Obviously, I know the Army pretty well, and I know the Air Force decently well from having worked very closely with the Air Force at times. And I would say there is a huge, huge difference between the way the Air Force approaches things versus the Army. And it kind of makes sense given what the Army's current and historical mission have been versus the Air Force. In the Army, you are expected to make it work one way or the other. If you have to solve a problem by making, like by everyone braids fucking 550 cord and the entire platoon makes one great big 550 cord rope and then hauls a fucking LMTV up a hill that way after it's broken down. You do it and you make it work. That's the expectation. Figure it out one way or the other. Whereas my experience in the Air Force is, because of what they work with, there's this approach of like, either you are expert and school trained and certified on this thing, or you do not fucking touch it. You don't even acknowledge it exists. And that translates into the way the Navy goes about solving problems, in my experience. I've told this story numerous times, that the difference between, if you've been in an airborne unit and you've only ever dealt with JTACs, you have a very unrealistic expectation of what the Air Force is like. With the Navy, I feel like I've only had limited experience with the Navy, and I've only ever worked with a couple of really good Navy NCOs, a couple of really shitty Navy NCOs, and one or two equivalent of field grade officers, like lieutenant commanders and one captain. And my experience has just basically been that, no offense to any Navy officer listeners who like this show and feel slighted, but maybe you'll recognize some truth. The general impression I've gotten is that like the enlisted exist to Navy officers to do exactly what they're told and to never say anything. And there is no real notion of being concerned for their welfare, because that's what petty officers are for. And I feel as though that approach would get you, your parachute harness would be inspected erroneously, and you would fall out of your parachute if you try to treat your guys like that if you were in the Army. Now, obviously, there's exceptions to that. That's hyperbole. There's lots of people who are fucking huge pieces of shit in the Army and they get away with it. Don't get me wrong.
But look, a lot of dudes got fragged in Vietnam for fucking
Vietnam,
racing.
Yeah, I mean, also, to be honest with you, though, like in some cases, people got fragged in Vietnam because they were dangerous and they were getting dudes killed. In other cases, they got fragged in Vietnam because they were like, hey, maybe we shouldn't murder people. So, like, I wouldn't necessarily use fragging as like the moral arbiter of someone's performance as an officer, because,
could be good,
let's
could
just
be
say,
bad.
The more I read about the Vietnam War, the more it's like, okay. So one of the points that I would make about this is I just feel as though, even if I'm being hyperbolic, even if I'm oversimplifying, these problems keep coming up. They keep being reported at the same time. And like, you can, I think at this point, make the argument that if the Navy's leadership were taking this seriously, something would have changed in the last fucking decade. And it does not feel as though it has. It feels as though every 6 months or so, we hear a new headline about some incident, some accident, some crisis that's happened because of low manning and insane work hours and people being injured on the job, and, a culture of being completely aloof on the part of the officers. It keeps happening. And I would say, if this is the case, like if these are only isolated incidents, then why do they keep happening all over the Navy? And if they're not isolated incidents, then who the fuck is running the Navy? Because at this point, like if you were like a captain or a rear admiral appointed to lead some fucking commission on this stuff, like by now you'd be, if you were still in the Navy, you would be, in the position to be like the secretary or like, the chief of staff of the Navy, like to be the senior most officer in the Navy. It's an insane situation. Maybe
it's kind of like how, some militaries is just like you go in and then you get abused and then you get to be the abuser one day. And that's just how the Navy works. Either you run away from it very quickly, or you're like, no, I could abuse some people. That's fine. Let's do it. I could run my boat into some shit.
I've never really worked with the Marine Corps. I worked with a few Marine officers here and there on exercise. I never encountered. I had some fellow Marine officers in my training cohort in schools. I never had any experience with the Marines, like working with the Marine units abroad, deployed, or anywhere. Obviously, I think they have a whole different can of worms as far as their leadership culture goes. But it's a world that I just don't really feel qualified to discuss, because it seems as though, well, it's a different kind of issue than the Navy, and like, I don't necessarily know if there's a scandal you can point to on the part of the Marines that's comparable to something like Fat Leonard. Maybe because the Marines make sure that all of their illegal lobbying is just made legal by Congress, but also because I think the big scandals that I can recall have been war crimes related, like mutilating corpses and or like they're the scout snipers guys having fucking Nazi runes, or like the Haditha Dam or things along those lines. Like it's a different problem. It's just as acute, but in the case of the Navy, it feels like this is a thing that is driving people to either desert or commit suicide, and it's been going on for a decade and nothing's been done about it.
Yeah, so you join the Navy and either you become, a nothing enlisted person, or you become a SEAL, and then when you become a SEAL,
or if literally anything goes wrong during your plan to become a SEAL, you get transported into like, your occupational specialty is like you are rated and certified to use a certain kind of degreaser when mopping the floor of a submarine.
Yeah. Don't if you're gonna become a SEAL, don't fuck that up.
Don't fail. Otherwise, I know a dude who was a swimmer on my team, and I thought he was gonna make it as a SEAL, and he blew out his eardrum doing like one of the diving exercises. He passed BUD/S, but he was in some other training thing and blew out, and he got reclassed. And whoops. Yeah,
you remember
the
the Bonham Richard was supposedly set on fire by a guy who failed out of the SEALs. It's like one of those, just like, if you're ever like wandering out a base, and like a Navy base, and you see like a really jacked dude who's a water supply specialist or something, or he's filling a vending machine, that's a failed SEAL probably.
Yeah, I mean, we had it too because you were an airborne unit. That's where SF failures, like SF-18 X-ray contract failures, or guys who were in the Ranger indoctrination program and failed go because they've already passed airborne school. So,
but at least they get to go to the infantry. Like, you don't join the Navy SEALs and fail out and just like, well, we have Navy infantry that you can go do. It's like, no, you're now doing like the most shit jobs ever.
Right, but I would make the argument that in terms of the sad faces I experienced with soldiers who thought they were going to be Rangers or Green Berets. Being in an airborne unit, especially if they send you to the 82nd, which they love to do, probably feels just as psychologically damaging as being the whatever official Navy rank is for being able to operate this particular kind of steel wool.
Yeah. What's your engine degreaser rate there, Seaman?
I was gonna say exactly like that's the rank you're addressed by, is you like steel woolsman's mates first class.
Yeah. Degreaser specialist, petty officer.
But what I would say though is I feel as though this also kind of comes back to one of our discussions about should you join the military or not. For most of my life, people were always saying, if you want to have a cake term of service in the military and not really risk getting your nuts shot off, but also be able to get all the benefits, you should join the Navy because they treat people well. It feels like this has been proven to be extremely false.
I always heard that don't join the Army, you join the Air Force if you're going to
join the Air Force. I think is absolutely, like, if you want to have
they have better jobs that you can do that translate better into the regular civilian sector.
Also, they basically have like what I might describe as sort of like not quite a workers' representation on the board, but they have like a whole organization just to represent the interests of
of
like
course the Air Force
of E5 and below. Like it's like, what is it? They call it First Five, and it's just like, it's unofficial, but I think, but it's just like those concerns are taken, like the idea of the Army having a thing to take care of the concerns of E5 and below, like they are like here knee pads and canteens to take a knee and drink water, and everything else you can go fuck yourself.
Not only does the Air Force have an E4 mafia, but it's fucking unionized.
I don't want to say unionized, but like the level of representation, or at least addressing their concerns that exist. In my experience, now this was just a thing I saw working on an Air Force base for 6 months. I felt as though junior enlisted in the Air Force, it was easier for them to have their concerns addressed, but I really don't know what it's like, and I feel as though if there's any people out there who listen to the show who can fill us in on what it's like to be junior enlisted in the Air Force, let me know, because maybe you're mad because you were assigned to a base in Honduras and this psychotic red-haired captain with combat badges was like making you salute, and you're like, what's a salute? I don't do salutes. I'm in the Air Force. We're on an airfield. That's bad form. But
what if a Honduran sniper shoots you, sir?
Exactly. What if you salute and it causes a change in the pressure, and then that causes one of the bolts to fall out on this fucking C5 that's a kilometer away on the airfield? You know, like it could cause operational deficiencies.
If you salute too hard, you're gonna blow enough wind to make this F-35 catch on fire. So just keep it to yourself.
if there were ever like an Air Force veteran who got VA disability because they had orthopedic injuries from saluting too hard, I would believe it. Like, if of all the branches of service, if you were going to be like, oh yeah, like I actually am VA disability rated because of injuries to my shoulder and elbow from saluting, that person would be in the Air Force.
And God bless them. Whatever the fuck you Air Forcers do, I guess keep doing it, because the Air Force never look. The Air Force. I'm not going to say the Air Force never comes up. The Air Force Academy has its own problems, but it's a very beautiful chapel that they have. But they also have problems with evangelical white nationalism. So,
I was going to say, like, it doesn't help that they're located in like the Vatican for evangelical Christianity.
Right, a place like Colorado, the place where everything is just Jesus and guns, which you would think would be Missouri, but no, you need mountains. You need some proper mountains to really Jesus and Missouri it up, apparently, or Jesus and gun it up.
Jesus in Missouri sounds even worse than Jesus and guns. I'm not gonna
you know
lie.
what? The Garden of Eden is in Missouri, so I won't hear any shit talking of that. If you talk to the Mormons, I don't know about anybody else, but the Mormons believe that the Garden of Eden is here, so we got that going for us.
That's one thing you got going for you. There's no Garden of Eden in Indiana. There is Santa Claus World, though.
Oh, Holiday World. I love Holiday World.
Holiday World, yeah.
The one place during the pandemic that did not do any kind of mask mandate. The one theme park that didn't do any mask mandates whatsoever because they're privately owned. Everywhere else is like, no, you got to wear masks. But Holiday World, nah, come to Indiana, come cough on each other.
There's no outbreaks traced back to Holiday World, because even in the face of that, people are like, no, it sucks. Why the fuck would I go there?
I kind of want to go. We'll see. Maybe when when you're going to be in the U.S. again, maybe you come visit your parents. You and me, we'll go to Holiday World. We'll do
drive to fucking Santa Claus, Indiana.
Hell yeah. Or we can fuck it. We'll meet up in Metropolis, Illinois. Or you can come over here to Nevada, Missouri. Whichever you want to do, man. It's fine. Go to Branson, buddy. Come on.
Fuck. I don't know. It's just I can just feel the Midwestness.
Our first live show in Branson, Missouri. See how quickly it takes somebody to throw a bottle at our heads.
I was going to say, exactly. Like the Hell of a Way live show was a great success for the first 7 minutes until people figured out what it was, and then both Nate and Francis were shot to death.
That's fine, because I'm going to be packing too, so at least we'll get to shoot back.
All right. Well, listen, I'm going to roll some of the bonus, which this week is the safety stand down provided by the Zoo Crew.
Hell yeah. Yeah, we did. I found some good articles about being safe and things to look out for when you're in the Army, like bears, apparently. Don't fuck with them.
I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. I saw a lot of bears in Alaska, and I would not fuck with them, so I strongly recommend you not do that.
An MNP, is a solid weapon. It does what it needs to do. Like, I just don't understand why. Well, here's the thing. I understand why gun nerds get a $2,000 AR, but anyway,
it's because they're fucking losers.
Hey.
Look, if you have an extra $2,000, get a real fucking hobby, man. Like, get really into magic cards or something. Quit being such a fucking nerd.
Just be a Warhammer guy. Like, I respect a Warhammer guy more than I respect a Warhammer collection more than I will ever respect a gun collection.
I respect losers who get into Bud Cane knives more than gun nerds. At least they're not going to fucking hurt anybody.
If you have a wall full of swords from fantasy series and shit like that, I'm impressed by that. I will be able to recognize and have discussions about some of those blades. If you walk in, it's like there's a bunch of fucking guns, 90% of them are the same. Congratulations.
Yeah, and the good news is, if someone has a wall full of swords, if you escape at a moderate jog, you're gonna burn them. They're not coming after you. Break the fucking ankles like you're a goddamn running back. Like, at least they can't hurt you.
Right. All I have to do is get into a narrow area and I'll be good. Especially knowing most people who do collect swords like that probably are not very adept with them.
It was all those all the pictures that were like people were posting all over the internet recently of all the fucking weirdos with their 120 gun collections. And it's like, not only is it a bunch of guns, but it's a bunch of really fucking uninteresting guns.
They're all the same. They're all the fuck. If you own 12 different ARs, you're a fucking moron. I'm sorry.
You need to own one. An AR is like a Lego set, man. You need to own one, and then you buy all the accoutrements and just swap it all out for however you want to take it to the range.
You don't need to own. Actually, if you have the money to afford one of those really nice ARs, a better use for your money would be literally crumple it up, roll it up real nice, and shove it up your own ass. Like, literally anything is a better use of it. Start a fucking savings account for the children you're neglecting. Jesus Christ. I'm so sick of gun nerds, man.
At least get something that's interesting. Like an AR is not interesting, but like like
Get a
cool,
fucking
like
blunderbuss,
yeah,
or like
get a punt gun, man. Bring those back. You
or
and a
like
homie get a punt gun is the original homie gun because you need two people to operate it.
Just a homie's boat and a flock of ducks.
Not anymore. A flock of ducks. A flock of fuck. That's what we're going to call them. Speaking of ducks, though, gentlemen, while personnel from the provost marshal were clearing the barracks, they made an interesting discovery: a flock of ducks being kept in one Marine's room.
Hell yeah, man. By law, squatters' rights, right? That's the ducks barracks room now.
it's also just like that's the purest possible thing that could exist in a lower enlisted Marines room versus it being like
I knew a guy who had a cat, but ducks are way better.
Versus like a collection of weird inflatable sex dolls or something. Like I feel like
we've all seen that before.
If you are the Marine, or if you know the Marine who had these ducks, please come on the show because one, you're absolutely precious and I want to protect you. But also
talk to me about your ducks, homie.
Yeah, I want to talk about some ducks. Like why, where, how, when,
Look,
like all the things. Like I'm PAO, man. The who, what, where, when, hows, and whys of this are all going to be fantastically interesting.
Look, we've talked about this on the Romecast. Everything is homies. He has duck homies.
Yeah, he's got duck homies,
what it's
man.
also, I'm entranced by the idea that it's not just like a duck, but like many ducks.
Several. Well, you got to have more than one duck. The duck's going to get lonely. And like I mean, if you've ever been around a guy who owns a bird, like birds fucking stink. To include ducks, right? If you keep them in enclosed spaces, they shit everywhere. You don't potty train a duck. How the fuck did he get away with this for so long? Like I'm not concerned. I'm impressed.
Not just the smell, but also like because like I don't know, barracks all fucking smell anyway. So like, and I'm sure that
they don't smell like bird piss and shit. Well, you'd hope not. You'd hope not.
if you're in the barracks at 29 Palms, they might. But
yeah, that's foundational is piss and shit. It's load bearing.
But also like they're not quiet. No, so I'm wondering.
God, no.
I'm wondering how that one got played off. That's really my question.
I wonder if there's some kind of unspoken or maybe very spoken agreement amongst that Marine, I assume a roommate, and then all of his neighbors like, look, we don't talk about the ducks.
Here's the thing. So the video, which was posted in the USMC subreddit, it's a 13-second long video that's obviously staged where somebody opened the door, found some ducks, and was like, hold on, close that door, I need to get a video of it. And it's opening the door, it says, let's see, the front door of this going in, it just says somebody wrote ducks at the top of it. We have the people who are living in here is a Lance Corporal and a PFC.
All right.
Actually, I think it's just so there's the sign, I guess on these barracks doors, they put like a piece of paper that has the company, 3rd Battalion, 4th Marines, company commander, section information, and the two people who live in there.
So this person just said like the Lance Corporal and then ducks.
The Lance Corporal is crossed out, so I think that there's just a PFC living in here, which may be how they got away with it.
The ducks ate him.
just like in Snatch, instead of feeding them to the pigs, they feed it to the ducks.
Yeah, you always got to be afraid of a PFC with a herd of ducks.
The ducks are hungry.
Okay, but what happened to who gets custody of the ducks in this relationship? What happens now?
Well, so the only quote from this about where the ducks are just says that the ducks were appropriately relocated and are in good health. No other animals were discovered during this incident. And I got to say, man, this video, these ducks look well. I mean, it's like, so you walk in, first off, there's a big bag of what I can only assume is duck chow on the ground.
Duck chow? Where did you buy that?
And once again, I just have this like you're just like walking to your barracks with this 50-pound bag of duck chow. Just like, don't worry about it, guys. Like,
sorry, I just paused it correctly, and it is like it's this bag, and it's a Purina bag, and it's got a picture of a fucking duck on it.
Like somebody like you just get that delivered to the bears. Like, Smith, like. Well,
yes, maybe there's a pond. Look, you're not supposed to take bread down to the ducks. It's not good for them. So this is a responsible PFC who's like
duck parent.
I want to feed. Yeah, I want to feed the ducks down. I want to feed the ducks down at the pond, at the Pooh Lake. I want to feed them.
All those scenic duck ponds they have at 29 ponds.
I don't fucking know. This dude found 4 of
Where
them.
did he get Where did he get ducks?
Yeah, like it's in the high desert. Like, what the fuck, man? Like, it's not like a place where there's just like waterfowl.
Yeah, and there's 4 ducks. So it looks like they open up. Okay, I gotta say they open up a closet. The ducks are on the floor, and it looks like they have a duck area. There's a shelf which has. Okay, I want you.
Area.
It's got a duck area. But I want you guys to also guess, like, there's a shelf and there's an immediate thing that caught my eye on the shelf.
Is it pictures of ducks? Is it like
no, it's not pictures of ducks. It's a marine, so take a wild guess of what it could be.
Is it a copy of Duck Hunter?
No.
That would be threatening.
It's a big old thing of fucking protein powder.
You
my God,
duck chow and you got private chow.
Were the ducks jacked?
I can only assume that this person is trying to create a duck army.
I'm just imagining like a bunch of ducks going around like hummingbirds because they got into the fucking PFC's Bang energy drinks.
Just fucking ripped ducks, like quack.
Oh fuck! Wasn't that like a thing?
Ripped ducks.
Do yourself a favor and Google goose with arms.
Oh, there's a whole subreddit for birds with arms, and it's always like really jacked arms on birds. It's very good.
Okay, sometimes the internet is good. That's fine. I finally found a good use for Reddit. To include my own subreddit page that somebody opened, this ducks with arms is the only good subreddit.
It looks like this person kind of knew what they were doing. They put down some like bedding and everything. They got the duck chow. These ducks all look healthy, like it said in the thing that they're all healthy ducks. So maybe this is a guy who knew what he was doing and just wanted some ducks.
He wanted duck homies.
I don't know where you get ducks in 29 palms.
It would be really funny if like all of this and he's like, you know, the duck guy, whatever else, but like his nickname is like Goose.
So that's all we get is we get this 13-minute video of some duck chow and some ducks. And
like, I need clarification of what happened to these ducks. I don't trust the fucking Marines on this. These ducks may have been enlisted against their will. It wouldn't be the first duck in the Marines, to be completely honest. We've talked about that on Lines Out by Donkeys. There's been a Marine duck.
Yeah, was it the duck during World War II?
Yeah, that duck didn't have a fucking choice, man. That's illegal.
Yeah, there's a lot of duck talk going around, and look, I personally want to give credit to this Marine for finding a place, for finding his place, and finding a way, because being a Marine is fucking hard, guys. It's hard to be a Marine, and to find the little spark, the little place that makes you feel good, and if that's 4 ducks in your closet, who's he hurting? Who's he hurting? All right, everybody, thanks for listening. You can follow me at Army Strang, follow Nate at In These Deserts, follow the podcast at Hell of a Way. You can find more of that bonus stuff on patreon.com, Hell of a Way to Die. We got lots of good stuff up there, fucking nearly 7 years worth of bonus content, and we don't stop doing it because people keep giving us money to do it. So
we will keep doing it as long as you keep being interested in it. And
yeah.
If there's anything you want us to cover, please let us know. And also something just to look out for. I am doing a new series on Hell of a Way, both on the free feed and the bonus feed with my wife, Cynthia, in which we watch American police procedurals and talk about how they are propaganda. That series is called Cop Watch. You can listen to one free episode on the free feed. It was last week's free episode. And you can also listen to one of the bonus episodes, which is on the Patreon. $5 gets you all the bonus content going all the way back to 2016.
That's right. And $10 gets you the care package that goes out quarterly, along with everything else. So if you want to get some stuff from the store too, hellofawaytodie.com, that's all there. So for everybody listening, thank you. Nate, we'll talk to you next week.
Yep, take care.